Hello, everyone. I'm Mitchell Lewis. Thank you for tuning in to this special roundtable discussion on the future of work in North Carolina. Following the 2016 Emerging Issues Forum on Future Work, the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University conducted a Future Work Prosperity Tour across the state to find out, as technology and demography shifts, how can North Carolina prepare today to create enough good jobs for tomorrow and what it means for our state's economy. Joining us to talk about the findings are Dr. Pamela Senegal, Vice President of Economic and Community Development, Continuing Education at Central Carolina Community College, David Bradley, President and CEO of the Greater Statesville Chamber of Commerce, and Donnie Charleston, Economy Policy Manager at the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. And to all of you, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Donnie, I'll start off with you because the Institute for Emerging Issues, after they had their forum, they did a Future Work Prosperity bus tour where they divided the state into 8 different regions. As you traveled the regions, what were some of the things you found out?
We learned quite a bit from talking to people like county commissioners, city councilmen, business leaders, education leaders, and so forth. We learned that people are anxious about the future. At the same time, they're very excited about the future. People are wondering what is going to be the impact on our communities when technology like self-driving cars comes down the pipeline, and will UPS need as many drivers as it currently has? What's going to happen to people who in my community are currently earning money through being Uber drivers when Uber replaces its fleet with self-driving vehicles as well? So it's those type of things that are keeping people up at night trying to figure out, where's my economy going? What are we going to be centered on for the next 10, 15, 20 years? So we learned there's a lot of anxiety about that. We also learned there's a lot of excitement because people are excited about these new technologies and how it's going to impact their communities and how it's going to grow jobs. And they're just trying to figure out how can we take advantage of those opportunities that are coming down the pipeline.
Now, with all this new technology coming up, there's education involved. And Pamela, especially the work that you're doing at Central Carolina Community College, how are you going about making sure that the students are prepared for this new workforce?
The biggest thing we're doing is that we're collaborating with business and industry and the community college to make sure that we're providing timely, appropriate training that we really couldn't do all by ourselves. And so one of our best examples of that is we have something called the Innovation Center, which was funded by Golden Leaf, by business and industry, by the county and the public, and the county and also Central Carolina Community College. But it's got flexible training space for us to do advanced manufacturing training. So when a company comes to us and says, we're about to put in a new piece of equipment, can you train our people on it? We have space at that Innovation Center for them to actually bring that piece of equipment there, and then we're able to provide the training not only for that company, but for other companies.
You're talking about space, and usually when it comes to the community college, when people are looking to either change careers or sort of improve on what they have, the community college is usually the first place they go to. And through the years, I mean, you guys have been getting a lot of people in, and sometimes the funding isn't there. How do you deal with that? You
know, we're funded a year in the hole. And so you're right, funding is always one of our greatest challenges. But the way that we're able to stay on top of things and to continue to provide relevant training is really through collaborations. We could not do it without business partnerships and collaborations. Another big issue for us in our region that we serve, which is Lee, Harnett, and Chatham County, was getting our high school graduation rate up and getting our high school graduates in our region to graduate with more than just a high school diploma. So we started something called CC Works. And through that program, we were able to put an advisor in every single high school throughout our 3-county service region. We couldn't have done that. The money for that didn't come from the legislature. It came again from a combination of partners, from the businesses, from individuals, from Golden Leaf, from public schools, and we all formed a collaborative initiative to really change the game. 4 years ago, we only had 50 high school students in our region that took advantage of this program. Now we have over 1,000 high school students who are taking advantage of this program, and they're graduating not only with a high school diploma, but also with college credit. So this is going to be a game changer for our region, but it can't happen without creative collaborations.
And David, I'll get you into this conversation because you're with the Statesville Chamber.
Absolutely.
Statesville has been going through a lot of adjustments through the years. How has that been going, and what are you looking at right now? What are you looking like?
Well, Mitch, thank you for that question. Statesville probably has gone through a lot of changes. We have expected for decades for the growth that's emanating from Charlotte to touch Statesville, and it hasn't happened, but it's getting ready to happen. And I think what we have a very progressive community. We're so appreciative of the Institute for Emerging Issues and the Prosperity Tour, sort of opening our eyes to see what our challenges are going forward. We had the Prosperity Tour in Statesville several months back, and Donnie suggested that in the Charlotte region, we might lose in the next generation 1.3 million jobs. That's a daunting number. It's incredible to think about that. But the challenge is for communities like Statesville is to try to figure out what are we going to do to replace some of those jobs. Certainly, we have to collaborate with all of our partners, the community colleges and throughout our communities. And we've got Mitchell Community College, which is as fine a community college as there is in North Carolina, that we collaborate with every day. And we look for a lot of different partners to work with. We also have to try to develop a community in which the 25 to 45-year-old populace will choose to live, because that's the sweet spot. That's the sweet populace that has the technological capacity that I only dream I had. So we have to create a cool environment. I've got a friend named Jason Broadwater who's out of Rock Hill who introduced me to the cool tax idea. So if a company in Cary was looking to hire an engineer, they might have to pay that engineer $100,000. A similar company in Statesville might have to pay $115,000 because it's not that cool to live in Statesville. So our cool tax is $15,000. How do we reduce our cool tax? How do we make it the place to be? And we've made great strides in creating a spot in which people can choose to live. And I think we have to do that all across North Carolina.
You were talking about the cool tax because as I was looking through some of my research, I remember that you all had done something else that was pretty cool. There was this video on YouTube, promoting Statesville. Talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, Mitch. It's, we have, we have some pretty fun guys that enjoy. We love where we live, and we enjoy celebrating with each other. I think communities across North Carolina, across the country, need to celebrate more. And so we pulled together 250 people to do a lip dub on the Black Eyed Peas' "I've Got a Feeling," and it showcased our downtown. And we got seen, but we had maybe 150,000 hits in the first 6 weeks or so. It was fantastic.
Now, Donnie, David had been talking about Statesville and especially the proximity to Charlotte, which is, largest city in the state. What are some of our larger cities doing to try to make sure that the workforce, or else you have the infrastructure in place to attract better jobs?
Mm-hmm. I mean, David mentioned earlier the 1.2 million jobs, and we worked with Mike Walden, an economist at NC State University, helped us figure out how many jobs are at risk in North Carolina, and that's pretty much the figure. 1.2 million jobs are possibly at risk in terms of if automation were to fully take hold and replace all the jobs that are at risk, it would be about 1.2 million jobs. And those numbers would likely hit our urban centers harder than the rural community, because in reality there are more jobs in our urban communities. And when we talk about technology rolling out, typically it's urban communities that are early adopters. And so urban communities are more concerned than some of our rural communities are about how this is going to impact them. And so when you talk to them, they're concerned about that dimension. They're also concerned about education particularly, because even though we think about communities like Raleigh and Charlotte as hubs for innovation and talent, they also have some deficits in those communities in terms of neighborhoods and some of our minority populations in particular that have educational deficits. So they're concerned about how can we bridge that gap so we can create a talent pool that's really going to move Charlotte and move Raleigh to the next level. And then even you look at communities like Greensboro, we think about the comeback from North Carolina. It's been a comeback that has helped out, for the most part, our urban communities, and not as much in our rural communities. And even in Greensboro and Winston-Salem, they're lagging behind the growth that has occurred in terms of the post-recession growth in Charlotte and Raleigh. So they're concerned in Greensboro and Winston-Salem is how do we then catch up to Raleigh and Durham? So they're trying to figure out what's their next best bet in aerospace, for example, so they can create that hub of innovation in those particular industry sectors that are going to be the next wave of innovation technology in North Carolina.
And Pamela, as being in education, what are some of the areas you see that are lacking, or more or less, what are some of the areas that people are coming to you saying, hey, can you train me in this area?
Right. There are two big areas. One is around advanced manufacturing, so making sure that folks are problem solvers. So our production levels for our companies in our region, we're finding that their production levels equal what they did 10 years ago, but yet their employment levels are only about half of what they were 10 years ago. And so we've already seen an introduction of technology aiding companies and being able to be more productive. And so the kinds of jobs that they're filling really require a set of critical thinking and problem solving skills, but also harder skills like welding, industrial maintenance, those kinds of things. The other segment that we're seeing a lot of need and demand is around healthcare. We've got a whole population. We're going to have the gray tsunami. And so we've got a whole group of folks who are going to need everything from all different kinds of care, but also think about the repair of medical devices. So at the rate at which folks are having different joints and things replaced, a couple of years ago, IEI actually did a forum where they showed 3D printing, actually printing organs and parts of bodies. And so our hope is that that kind of technology is what's going to continue to really grow in this region. And as a result, our healthcare training programs are going to have to provide and feed people who have that kind of thinking and that kind of skill.
And David, I saw you agreeing with Pamela. What are some of the things you're looking at in the Statesville area?
Well, no question. Healthcare is a key topic that all of us will face. We've also chosen through, really largely through Institute for Emerging Issues suggestions for us to take a look at really what some of our unique assets are. Iredell County has the primary economic engine for Iredell County, interestingly enough, is agriculture. So how can we utilize those assets, particularly through creative and innovative entrepreneurialism? How can we expand those assets, whether it's through increasing yieldage per acre, having direct businesses begin to work with our local farmers. It's fascinating once we've been able to get all of these people to the table to have a conversation about what their needs are, what their hopes are, what their dreams are. We've realized that, gosh, we all have an opportunity to work together, and we're beginning to see some very active movement, particularly in the agricultural business.
So Donnie, as you went across with the Prosperity Bus Tour, was there anything out of the ordinary that seemed to have emerged when you were talking to these various cities and saying, okay, how are you guys preparing for future work? Was there anything specific that came out that was maybe unusual?
I wouldn't say unusual, but I think there's some things that we learned that surprised us a bit. For example, when we talked to David and his crew in Statesville, one of the things that was on their mind was agriculture. We tend to think that North Carolina has transitioned and we've become an economy that's based on finance and banking and technology, but we forget that many of our communities are still agriculturally dependent. And so the question is, how do we then bridge all of the technological innovation that we have at our institutions like NC State University with communities like Statesville to figure out how we can, move the needle on, those next generation of ag tech that's going to really bring some money, jobs, and so forth to North Carolina. So I think that was the one thing we learned is sometimes we need to slow down and really look at what's going on in each one of our communities in North Carolina and not assume that everything's moving on all cylinders, hitting on all cylinders in all of our communities.
Pamela, in your efforts to, I guess, link the community college with the community, how important are nonprofits?
They are tremendously helpful because all we can do at the community college, our real focus is on helping students obtain their education. But very often the thing that prevents a student from being able to continue has nothing to do with their ability to do the work, but it's all the other things in their lives. And so we also partner with nonprofits to make sure that our students get the other things that they need in order to be successful. We're actually we're the only community college in the state that actually is the administrative entity for our region's workforce development board. And through that partnership, we're able to make some really clean, easy referrals for students who are in our programs but might need other resources. And so we're able to easily refer them to those WIOA programs and those partner agencies to make sure that students can continue to be successful and get the skills that they need.
David?
I was gonna touch. What a great question. When we think of technology and innovation, our first thought is towards business and then perhaps to schools. But there are nonprofits in our communities that are doing incredible work, and they have that niche specialty. But we have to also work with those guys to become more creative and more innovative, because the problems that they're going to solve tomorrow are much different than the problems they're going to solve today. So we have to use their expertise, but also equip them and foster them to think innovatively and creatively to be able to be able to address those upcoming issues.
And actually working with nonprofits also does something that Donnie talked about. It helps us get to an audience of folks that we might not necessarily serve otherwise.
Right.
And so making sure that these great opportunities for new skills and these wonderful opportunities in the economy that are going to happen aren't just for a small segment of our community.
Right.
By partnering with nonprofits, we make sure that these opportunities go across our entire communities. And that's what's so powerful about partnering with nonprofits.
So if you had a wish list of organizations to assist you in making sure that future work is available for folks in the Statesville area, what would you be looking at?
The first place to go is the community college, right? That's the first partner that you have to gather, because the community college has the ability to address current issues quickly. Secondly, you have to get your city and your county leaders, the governmental leaders, involved and engaged. But you also have to get we have to think out of the box. We probably ought to go to our junior high schools, our children in junior high school, and say, what do you want? What type of a community do you envision living in? We need to go to our elementary school children and start coding classes in elementary school. We need to. The wish list of getting people to the table can be as big as the table is, but you have to have education, and particularly the community college. You have to have governmental leaders, but you have to have a diversity of overall leadership in the community that can help create a better neighborhood.
And Donnie, especially with the Institute for Emerging Issues, because you're bringing this issue up. Are there any other, say, projects that you're working on, perhaps with these other communities, to help them as far as getting ideas to bring better jobs or those future jobs to North Carolina?
Well, right now we're on the tail end of a program we started in 2015, was Innovate NC, which we're doing exactly that. We have these clusters of communities around the state of North Carolina. We're working with them, providing them with technical assistance and information so they can do just that, create innovation clusters right in their own communities and cities all over North Carolina. And so that's in the second year of its development, and these communities are coming up with some really phenomenal plans about how they can move their city from where it is to being a shining, gleaming entity that companies want to see and want to come and grow jobs there. So that's where we are with that program, and hopefully that'll bear a lot of fruit for North Carolina.
And I'll ask both you, Pamela, and David, how has the Institute for Emerging Issues, say, truly assisted you in trying to bring forth creating jobs or coming up brainstorming about the types of jobs that are needed? Pamela?
They bring together experts from literally all over the world that I wouldn't otherwise have access to, and it helps us think through what our community is going to look like. And without the Institute for Emerging Issues, I don't know that we'd have that perspective. Even the example that I gave you earlier about the role of additive manufacturing or 3D printing. Well, now that's actually becoming a reality, and that's something that IEI brought out years ago. But we already had that on our radar as a result of being part of those conversations that they help facilitate and bring.
And David, how has it helped Statesville? I will tell you, we owe so much gratitude to the Institute for Emerging Issues because, as Pamela noted, it has opened the world to us to see where our shortfalls might be, but also to gather people together. We've talked about agriculture. Iredell County is a relatively semi-urban county, but we've been able, now we're talking with farmers to really become key business leaders in our community and to look at opportunities to grow that business and to become, for Iredell County to be more attractive for the totality of entrepreneurialism in the community. I think we have so much more to offer to entrepreneurs now than we did 2 or 3 years ago, and that's largely because of the Institute for Emerging Issues.
And Donnie, I'll throw this at you because sometimes we hear a lot about bedroom communities. Mm-hmm. What role will these bedroom communities play as far as bringing folks in and especially getting the jobs that perhaps that larger city may need?
I think if you look at some of our bedroom communities around the state, Union County, which neighbors Charlotte, if you look at Johnson County, which neighbors Wake, those are communities that have experienced tremendous growth over the last 10 to 15 years, and they're dealing with the challenges of that growth. And so their focus has been largely in some of those communities on just how to manage that growth in terms of schools, in terms of roads and infrastructure and things of that nature. But now, if you see those communities now transitioning to figure out, okay, it's not all about our people leaving our county, our community, and going into Wake County, going into Charlotte. How do we keep some of those people here and develop a jobs base that's going to keep some of those people here and those dollars here and develop that property tax base as well? So they're going into that next phase of thinking and the next phase of planning so they can figure that piece out. And so I think what you start to see is even more of an expansion, if you will, of this footprint of our metro communities, and really will have these regional communities that expand beyond 1 and 2 counties. So we have this core county and 2 and 3 counties beyond that. And I think that's where you'll see the nation is moving as a whole, but North Carolina is starting to move in that direction as well, just like Atlanta, just like Dallas and so forth.
David, we've been talking about challenges here and there, but hey, there are some good things going on in Statesville.
Oh, make no mistake. We talked about trying to create a community in which people want to live. One of those things that we've really tried to focus on has been creating opportunities for people to celebrate. We just had an international film festival, the Full Bloom Film Festival. We've got something going on in our community, at least 2 or 3 things, large events that are happening every weekend. Our downtown has been recognized as one of the most vibrant, aesthetically cool downtowns in North Carolina. We're beginning to see people moving to starting to live downtown, which is really the blood of our city. I mean, it's fantastic, and we're seeing a great deal of vibrancy in our community, largely because of it's become the place to live in Iredell County.
Now, Pamela, of course, being in education, and there are some folks who, as we mentioned earlier, they may be looking into a new profession or maybe changing professions. Right now, what do you see as the future jobs that Central Carolina Community College is working to prepare courses for?
We're really working very closely on the key things around advanced manufacturing and all aspects of health. In fact, we're opening up a brand new facility in Chatham County that's going to be exclusively devoted to healthcare programs. And because that facility won't open for a couple of years, we have some idea about the programs, but we're open to the fact that there may be some changes that are going to come in the medical community that we're going to need to be prepared to pivot and respond to quickly. Same thing with the advanced manufacturing. As Chatham mega site, hopefully we'll get an advanced manufacturing, we'll get an automotive manufacturer or an OEM, or, an original equipment manufacturer, or something along those lines. We'll be right there. We've already analyzed the kinds of training needs that would be needed from a sister state, from South Carolina, for similar needs. And so we're preparing right now to, again, pivot to whatever the region needs in terms of its workforce. The community college is going to be there to make sure they get exactly what they need.
So, Donnie, when we think of the Institute for Emerging Issues, think and do. So now that you've done this particular future work program, what's next? Because we don't think it's going to be collecting dust. Where do you go from here?
Well, one thing in the immediate is we've taken all the information that we've gathered from going around the state this past summer, and we're putting that in a report. And so we can share that with everyone, from the General Assembly to the people at Commerce and just anyone who had an opportunity to attend any of our sessions. So that's one thing. Secondly, we have some data reports that are coming out that are looking at the skills, the future skills of North Carolina, and what is the payoff for those skills. So if you have an increase in your skill level over and above your education, what's the exact payoff for that? And so we have some work that we've done with the Department of Commerce to quantify that return on investment in terms of developing developing skills, not just educational credential, but the skills themselves. And so that's something we have as well. And so we'll be rolling out those products in the immediate, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then beyond that, we're starting our next program of work, which is looking at our future workforce. So we're talking about future work. The reality is we're talking about kids 0 to 8 years old. That's our future workforce. And so how do we create a system and figure out how to finance a system that's going to prepare those kids to be future doctors, lawyers, and so forth. So we're ramping that up here in the next couple of weeks, and we are very excited about it.
So if you had to say the future of work in North Carolina, what's the status of it?
It's bright and it's shining, and we're hopeful that we can catalyze all the energy and excitement around the state of North Carolina and really push forward and really develop some really innovative clusters around the state and just bring more and more jobs to the state of North Carolina. That's what we're excited about.
And we'll stop it here. We thank you for being here today. I would like to thank our guests for participating in this roundtable discussion on the future of work in North Carolina. For more information on the topic, go to emergingissues.org/futurework. Thanks for watching.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.